King James is arriving soon at Detroit Public Theater, and today we're talking with two of the cast members from this production, Alexander Pobutsky and Mateo Davis. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, thank you for having us.
Our pleasure, my treasure.
So you're currently in the middle of rehearsals for this production. Mateo, how has the rehearsal process been so far?
Oh, it's been great. It's honestly just I enjoy being in the rehearsal space, being in the rehearsal room, being able to work, figure things out because you do a lot outside of it, and so being able to come together, bring different ideas into the room is great. It's been a wonderful time.
Alexander, how about for you? What's it been like?
Awful. No, it's been great. I find that it's just always interesting how even if you're like super tired or you're just like, I don't want to be here, you constantly keep making new discoveries in the material. Things that you go over lines. I spend my mornings just going, like walking down DeQuinder Cut, and I would just go over the lines in my head or from the script. And when you're doing that, you often come up with ideas, but I feel like, um, yeah, just when you're in the rehearsal space, something different is happening. It is truly, it might sound pretty cliche and maybe somewhat cringe, but the depth of the art is like sort of infinite. There's always new stuff to discover, which is daunting and terrifying and also exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is where you're kind of growing your characters and the story's kind of finding itself with the two of you.
We had a really big shift actually, I think, where yeah, I think that we were doing some work on the first scene in particular, and this is a play about friendship, and just something clicked where, it tonally changed very much in my opinion. I think you probably agree that
Mhm.
like the friendship really clicked in, or at least the spark of friendship really clicked in the first scene, and it kind of changed the rest of the show for me, at least personally.
Yeah, you can see like the development. You can see how from the beginning how that friendship can progress, and then is represented throughout the rest of the show.
For sure.
Hmm.
And so for those who maybe aren't familiar with the what this play is, King James, Mateo, what's kind of the story without giving away too much?
I'd say overall, it's a story about friendship. Yeah, friendship. Because with King James and the idea of it, a lot of people assume that it's just about basketball, but basketball is just sort of like the foil or like what is used in order to express the deeper themes of the show. So overall, yeah, I think it's a show about friendship and how um two guys interact and go through life together with basketball being the focal point or the fulcrum in which they both kind of teeter on or find connection with.
For sure, absolutely. With a play that is centered around the fandom of LeBron James, how do you feel like that kind of shapes the emotional core of the story?
Oh, I think it shifts it quite a bit because especially the characters are from Cleveland Heights, and so being that they are Cleveland natives and things like that, they have a whole deeper appreciation and understanding of LeBron James throughout his entire career. So from knowing him, seeing him blow up as a high school player, then play for the Cavs, then just to leave, and then come back. There's a whole lot of emotional turmoil that they go through. In his whole trajectory, and that kinda their whole relationship kinda plays against that, and the problems that they face and things like that.
For sure, absolutely. So, Alexander, with this story, what was it about this story or this production that really drew you to wanting to be a part of it?
Oh man, the paycheck.
Hello?
No.
That's a great answer. That's a perfect answer.
Professionally as an actor, I
I mean, we all
think,
need to pay our bills here, right?
yeah, I think the show is just lighter than stuff I usually do. Um, I also get to be, I feel like, pretty goofy in this show. Um, the last couple shows I did at the public were pretty heavy emotionally.
Sure.
This one is a lot less heavy. And also, it's just about, I feel like I don't see stuff about friendship a ton. And every time I do, there's like two things I love seeing, like rivalry. Ugh, sign me up. Like movies like Amadeus, or I remember really liking Rush, or just about friendship. Like there's that Indian movie that came out called RRR, which is just
Right.
about these two guys that are friends. It's a crazy movie. It's totally bananas, but there's just something about stories about people just being friends,
Mm.
and like that really drew me in. I'm really big on chosen family in my own life. So just my friends are my life in a lot of ways. I think having community is what makes being in a human body tolerable. for the
For
most
sure.
part, in a way, you know?
For sure. As a psychologist, I can agree and attest to that. Yeah, human connection is super, super important, and it's what makes life tolerable in many instances, but also is the best part of life at the same time.
Yeah, especially with a friendship in particular, because without the sexual or romantic aspect, there's so much less stuff to there's so much less bullshit to deal with. I keep forgetting we can cuss on here. There's so much less bullshit we have to deal with. Or not even bullshit, but just like they're just almost easier to navigate in a lot of ways, but they also have the same pain when they end too. Like maybe not the same, but friendships are just
Because
yeah,
it is still that love, the
yeah.
connection between the friends.
For sure, absolutely. And this play does say a lot about friendship and loyalty, kind of over time, over a lifetime.
Heavy on the loyalty,
For
yes.
sure, for sure. So Mateo, for you, besides the paycheck, what was it that kind of spoke to you when you first kind of saw the script?
Um, and actually, I love that you said you're a psychologist because first of all, like if I didn't get into theater, I was either gonna go into psychology or interior design or costume design.
Hell
I
yeah,
love that.
absolutely.
So for me, it was genuinely the psychology of it. I love acting because I like being able to understand a different point of view or a different character's point of view. Being able to go into the script, break it down, and then you know there are certain things that are given to you within the script, but I love being able to search through it and figure out okay what is unsaid that helps define or inform the character. And so, especially with this being a show with only two actors, only two characters speaking, I loved the idea of being able to just be able to get into it, break it down, because you
Sure.
there's nothing else to really worry about besides why are you doing what you're doing, you know what I mean? And so yeah, that's what really drew me to it was being able to understand who this character was and without all the other.
Their perspectives
Mm.
also flip-flop, like, they sort of switch roles constantly throughout the
Mhm.
show, and I found that really interesting. Like, when they're Jordan fans or when they're LeBron fans or, like, when they're mad, when they're not, they both just as individuals, but also as a pair, they just, like, have these role reversals that are really interesting and just yeah, strange to gauge and
Mhm.
figure out.
I mean, that has to be kind of awesome to dig in as an actor, but at the same time, is it kind of like nerve-wracking to be the only two kind of up
Oh, yeah.
there?
Of
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a draw for sure doing a two-hander, like, it's cool, to be on stage the whole time and it's just me and one other person. I'm sure you feel that, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's terrifying. There's so many lines.
And there's
There's so
nothing
many
to fall
fucking
back on.
lines. Yeah. I mean, we have each other, but there's so many goddamn lines.
Which I mean, there's no one else to kind of like fall back on besides the other person. You know what I mean? Like you can't hide behind, a wall if you need to for a second. It's just
And
the two of you.
Or it's always about us. Yeah, it's never like I'm just sitting here and I get to just do nothing. We're one of us is always talking,
mhm. Mhm.
and when we're not talking, we're acting, you know?
So Mateo, you're playing Sean. Who is Sean to you?
Oh, Sean actually gives a little bit. I see a lot of myself or like my younger self in him. There's almost a chip on the shoulder. He has a point to prove. Nothing was really handed to him as a kid. And so there's like this drive in order to prove things to him, not only to himself, but to others. And so I do that a lot. Um, in just terms of proving things to myself, going after different things because it's like, okay, what can I do? Or, even sometimes I might say I want to do something and somebody's like, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to work out. And then it's like, no, I got this. I have a vision in my head of what I really want or what I want to go after. And so I'm going to do what I can in order to accomplish that. And I find that Sean does that a lot within his own life from when he was a kid all the way up until, he's 33, going after what he wants, figuring out how to accomplish that no matter what stands in his way at that point.
And so where do you said that you mentioned that this kind of has a little bit of you in it, but also where do you kind of begin processing and developing a character such as him?
Where do I begin? Essentially, I just really start with the script, the words, figuring out what are the facts. All right, what is said about him? What does he say about himself? And then from there, I start to try to needle through what can I relate to, what can I not relate to. They say this about him, or they use this adjective to describe him. So why at that point did they choose that adjective? What can I use from the script that supports whatever adjective they use to describe him? Things like that. That's usually where I begin. And then from there, that's why I really like rehearsals, is because I could take any questions, ideas I have in my head and then shoot them out and then get different people's perceptions, their own understanding of the words, and then, from there, combine those to figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't.
I love that because you're starting like with an outward perspective of who Shawn is, and then figuring out internally who does it match, and then that cognitive dissonance or not, and where that sets with everything.
Exactly, exactly, and then getting into the rehearsal space and then be able to figure out the physicality of it, is, at least for me, the next step.
Perfect. Alexander, you're playing Matt, and so who's Matt to you?
I think that Matt on paper seems really like, well, he is for sure privileged, but he seems obnoxious, and I think he's a lot to be around. He's pretty high energy, and I think a big personality takes up a lot of space. But I think that behind that veneer is someone who wasn't like super believed in growing up. I think that he is incredibly loving and like just super down to make friends. He's not one of those people that's like, I go to work and I do that and then I go home. Like, I think he's like actively seeking connection all the time. I mean, it's evident from the first few pages of the script when he meets Shawn, he's just like making conversation about kind of nothing. And like Shawn's there to do something, and Matt is very much just like, let's just chat. Like, we're two boys in here. Let's just have fun. I think that he's very young. I think he'll probably he's one of those people that'll be like a kid his whole life in a good way and probably in some negative ways too. Um, and I think he has a lot of ambition.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
he does stuff that
Wi-
I would be afraid to do for sure.
I mean, there's something exciting about that though, playing a character that is just so like forwardly outgoing. That
Yeah,
is
it's
maybe
because
very
an
opposite
actor
for
I'm
some.
often seeking naturalism, or just like being
Sure.
like be subtle. And I actually think that Matt is not subtle in a lot of
Mm.
ways. And it's scary to play. I'm also like I'm very big in my own life and like loud and I'm a personality, but I think that Matt, yeah, it's fun to play like just a big personality. I don't have to like not everything doesn't have to be subdued. I mean, it'll be a journey finding that balance, but that will come in shows, I think, as opposed to rehearsals, which is its
Sure.
own beast.
So is your developmental process for Matt similar for Mateo's for Shawn, or do you differ in your process a little bit?
I think in some ways, I mean, what Mateo said is great about the just starting with the words.
Sure.
Um, I don't know that I have a specific process. I think that every character is different. I think that's something that I'm doing now in this era of my life. I mean, we have a big age gap. I'm 9 years older than Mateo. Um, and like just at this point in my work, I think that I'm really trying to fully be myself. And I think that there is this mythologization of acting of like that you get away from yourself. And I think that that's kind of like ho hum nonsense. We have people like
Sure.
Daniel Day-Lewis, and you're like, he disappears in the role and whatever. But I think that ultimately actors are always really being themselves. And the more you do that, the more interesting it is, the more real it is. I think I've often played ideas of scenes. I mean, I've been doing this long enough now that I trust in my craft. I know how to like know the lines and like say the lines. And I think I understand these characters. I'm also really a feelings based person, not necessarily like, I need to know all of these details. I mean, it's fun to know the details and stuff, but I relate generally to people and characters on a feelings level. Like I I don't think I'm received in the same way as Matt, but I know what it's like to feel, like I'm too much or that I'm failing or, excited about something, or just like pumped to make friends. I think in that way it's easier for me to relate to stuff. Um, but yeah, right now the goal is to just be myself. You see people like McConaughey or Michael Cera or um, I don't know, Eddie Murphy, like any number of actors that are just like they're just themselves, and it's not a problem. It's not like yeah, that's my answer.
I mean, I think it definitely leads to authenticity, which would make sense. You're finding the authentic self and also
Yeah, it's not that you're not
authentically
acting.
from me.
It's not that you're not acting. It's that you blend the two.
Mm.
It's not that you
Sure.
remove yourself to become this other thing. I mean, we watch specific actors for specific reasons. Like we watch Tom Hardy because he's really intense and there's like this wild card nature to him, or like Um, for some reason, I can't think of any single actor ever in this moment.
That's fair, though. I mean, I know what you mean. Yeah, everybody kind of has their identity, and part of that is blending the two, making
Everyone sells
there's
something. Yeah.
yeah, for sure,
And we want to see Michael Cera be awkward. Like him being awkward is no one, it's like almost unmimicable, that level of awkwardness, you know?
for
And
sure,
for him to remove himself from that would be like, what a shame, you know?
sure. So with there's being so many themes here of friendship, loyalty, what Mateo do you feel like is the theme that really resonates the most with you with where you're at in your life right now?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. Actually, crazy enough, and I don't wanna keep harping on it, bringing it back, but I would say it's, like, the friendship aspect
Sure.
because, at this point in my life, I have been analyzing a lot of the friendships, acquaintances, people that I have in my own life, you know, figuring out timing and hanging out, things like that is, like because as you get older, you start realizing or you realize that, um some people are only in your life for a season. Some people are only in your life for a time or things like that. And you have to be okay with sometimes they were good in the moment, but you no longer line up. And so you may have to let that relationship not die necessarily, but changes the dynamic of it. And so I find that in the play, there's a lot of figuring out where they fit into each other's lives with basketball. And so that's kind of where I'm at is, just trying to figure out how or what adult friendships look like at this point, and finding time for that and what that looks like.
It's an important thing to explore. I mean, adult friendships is much different than like teenager or young adult
Yeah, because it's
friendships.
hard to make friends as an adult unless you get outside or you out in the community doing something or whatever. It's very difficult. And so yeah, finding finding those um finding those relationships and then also figuring out maintaining them is a large part of what I'm doing right now.
Alexander, you look like you disagreed there. Do you feel like it's easier to make friends as you get older?
I don't think it's easier, but I think there's friends everywhere. But I'm
Okay.
also, I love making friends. I mean, like I said, it's what life's about. You just get in a volleyball league or a pickleball league or take an improv class, take a class of any kind.
Mhm. You have to
Um,
actively search for it.
yeah, I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I've never gone from the standpoint of like, I'm going to go make friends, but, um, yeah. And I do understand that for some people it's harder, of course. And, I just, socialization has become a survival mechanism for me. So I just like, it's the spice of life, as it were.
Yeah, for sure. There are some people like during COVID that they completely thrived not having to be around people, and there's some people that needed that connection. So it just depends on
That's
who you are
good.
as a
Yeah.
person.
No thanks.
Mhm.
But back to the themes, Alexander, is there any theme that really resonates with where you're at in your life right now?
I mean, he took my fucking answer. Uh,
Perfect.
no, I
Sorry.
think, I don't know. For me, I think that it's not just friendship. I mean, at this stage in my life, I'm gonna stop saying that phrase at some point in this interview. But uh, at this stage in my life, I found that it's not just friendship that resonates with me, but like there's certain friends that are just family. And you're
Mhm.
like, and I've grown apart from certain people and there's been moments in my life that people have done things where I'm like, "Oh, this is a deal breaker for me." And then you live without them in your life for a while and you're like, "I don't know that it's a deal breaker." Like I'd rather that we like move on from that thing that felt unforgivable and we maintain this friendship. And that's not a spoiler of the play of any kind. It's just generally speaking that like um themes of like this person is family to me, and like in spite of differences or in spite of like difficulties that this relationship might have, life is better with you in it than without you.
Which is definitely something I think that people, as they grow older, absolutely, you start to realize that maybe it's not worth throwing it away as we did when we were 18.
Yeah, there's a guy that was like my brother in high school, and then in our 20s we kind of drifted apart. And then I was like, I'm kind of done with this. But then I was like, I can't get rid of this guy. Like, I cannot get rid of this guy. And then we had a talk, and I was just like, I basically said that. I was just like, we have there's something here that's like, there's a friction that we need to figure out because we're kind of stuck with each other. And
For
like,
sure.
worth figuring out that friction. And we did. And like, we talk now. It's not awkward. We had to come to Jesus. Jesus came, and we're good.
Uh, so, Alexander, if you had to ask your character one question, what would you say that question would be?
Whoa.
Listen, sometimes I gotta throw the psychology
How
questions
can
in
you
there.
ask him the easy questions
What?
first? You know what I mean?
I'm trying to switch it up and to be fair here.
What would I ask him? I feel like there's like advice I would like to give him
Sure, we'll
as
take that.
opposed. I mean, one of them is just like breathe. Like, take some breaths, my dude. You know, uh, as an actor, I will have to be breathing up there. But
Sure.
like as a character, I also think like you can let go a little bit. I mean, I guess if it's a question like, why do you hold on so tight? I think that
Great
there's,
question.
I think he's also like, there's some aspects of him that are ready to fight. Like he thinks that the world is against him in a lot of ways. And yeah, so I know I'm not really answering your question. I'm more so shifting it to an advice thing, but I just think that he doesn't need to be so ready to defend himself. Or
I
like,
don't.
yeah, or like, hey, just leave. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to say anything else because I
I
don't want
would
to say.
say that your question of why do you hold on so tight is an excellent one because I mean that is a question, and that is something that maybe a lot of people need to ask is like why are you holding on to something so tight? Like what are you gaining from that? So
Yeah.
uh, perfect answer. You gave the best answer. See, you went first and you gave the perfect answer.
Thanks. Do you think that that was?
I think that was
I
pretty
want
good.
to
That
hear
was
your opinion for
nifty.
real.
Okay, if I don't know if you asking me, but I'm gonna answer.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
I'll have to go that route too, though. I don't necessarily have a question. A question might arise from the advice, but the one thing that came to my head is uh oh, what was I gonna say? Lord have mercy. Like sort of the vein of you don't have to try so hard, or like oh you have nothing to prove. That's what I want to say. Is like you have nothing
Okay.
to prove. Because like I said, he sort of goes around like with this chip on his shoulder, and so it's like you don't always have to constantly fight to be recognized in a certain space. You don't always have to fight in order for people to recognize the work that you do, or you don't have to get approval before you like something yourself. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so that's sort of what I would give him. And so yeah, a question did not arise out of there. I guess I would ask like why does why do other people's opinion of what you like matter so much?
Sure.
I guess would be a question, you know? Because if you like it, let that be it. You like it. You don't have to worry whether other people like it or not, you know?
You don't have to justify it to anybody.
Exactly, exactly. This the
One
authenticity.
absolutely. So one final question for the both of you before I let you go. Is just what are you hoping audiences take away from this production of King James?
I hope people leave this show, and we've had this experience already, but I hope people leave the show being like, and when I say people have had this experience, I mean like people in the crew or like the director Courtney, who's wonderful. Shout out Courtney Burkett.
Yeah, Gordon.
Is that people leave and they're like, my biggest takeaway for people would be that like they leave the space and they're like, fuck, I should reach out to that
I
person.
knew you were gonna I knew you were gonna say that because
Back
that's
up,
what I
back
was going
up.
to say. But he didn't want to say something
No,
at first.
leave the camera.
See, look.
No, he is that, yeah, I hope people leave and they're like, this thing in my life that I like, basically what I just illustrated in my own life of being like, that person's out of there. The people leave and they're like, you know what? I really miss that person and it's not worth this idea in my head. And yeah, that yeah, I had a friend do something like really shitty to me 2 years ago. And then I was just like, the pain is my own business now. Like the hurt and the anger it's not their problem. Like they don't even
Sure.
see it anymore. Like this is just my own shit. So like I can choose to squash this. And I did. And now this guy is a really good friend and we talk every week. He is like super supportive. He came to my first Doesn't Matter, this thing last week. Like, yeah, and it was worth circumventing that or just like moving past it. And sometimes obviously relationships can be toxic and like if a thing is not changing, then it's not changing. But like things that seem unforgivable are. And I think people also stay with this thought that like, no, that's just not me. I could never do that. And I was one of those people that was like, I could never do that. like that's a deal breaker. And then it happened, and I was like, wait, what if I'm not that person though? And then you move past it, and you have this wonderful friend, and you actually deepen that relationship by transcending whatever thing happened.
Beautiful answer.
I'm just
I like how you went from I'm gonna answer first. I'm not gonna answer first. You answered first. Gave a beautiful answer.
And they spoke for 3 hours. Like, God damn.
Well, Mateo, it's your turn. You got to follow that up with whatever he just blacked out and said.
From the audience reaction that we had thus far, I do want them to take away or to walk away and be like, yeah, I analyze some of their own relationships in their life. I want them to be able to reach out to somebody after a long while or however long it's been and rekindle that relationship if that's something that they want. I just want people to walk out of it and feel seen, feel welcome, feel heard,
Sure.
like I'm trying to come up with something because he just took my whole ass answer.
I don't even know what he's
I'm
talking about.
Right, I'm vomiting right now. Like, that's it.
I mean, but that makes sense. It kind of goes along with what Alexander was saying. Like, you want people to be heard, but you also, like, hearing people is sometimes the part of like understanding. Like, hey, maybe it's not that important.
Right. It's because I always like to say it's one thing to communicate, but it's another to comprehend. So someone can be saying as much as they'd like, but if you're not understanding or vice versa, then the communication is not really happening. There's nothing's, you're not going to be able to move forward from that. And so it's a two-hander. No pun intended. But, being able to talk about.
You can cut that part out.
You know what? Just everything that he says, actually. You can cut the video right down the middle.
Yeah.
But being able to talk about certain things, not only talk about certain things, but be able to have the other person understand where you're coming from.
For sure.
Large part.
Also, I think just one last thing I'll say is that, like, they're seeing a play about friendship. Mateo and I became friends through this process. Like, they're not watching two people pretend.
Yeah.
Like, we're just like homies now. So that's like a fun aspect of it too. Is like, I think it makes the show. I know it makes the show better.
For sure. I totally thought you two hated each other by the end of this. I'm just...
Yeah, no, I don't know what he's talking about. I can't wait to be done with this so I can like get rid of.
I'm blocking him the second the show's over. I'm never speaking to him again.
But truthfully, that also adds what we said earlier to the authenticity. The two of you have developed a friendship that's going to play out also in the show. People are going to buy into that a lot more.
It makes it a lot more fun. I mean, it's just us up there, so like.
Yeah, we better like each other.
Yeah,
I was worried when I was like, "Who's going to be the other person?"
Sure. But it all worked out in the end. So
now I'm just worried.
I'd say so.
It did. It did.
So thank you so much, Alexander and Mateo, for being here and to talk about King James with us. We appreciate it.
Fun. Yeah, great meeting you.
King James arrives at the Detroit Public Theater on May 6th and runs through June 7th. So get your tickets now. We'll see you at the show.